Welcome to the Brain Network podcast. We have the Brain Network's resident Bogan with us today again, Jade Wright.
G'day.
And we also have Pete Wand, who is a personal trainer and founder of Dominate, an athlete-based training system for athletes and people who are not athletes. We're going to talk about exercise. So I'll start with Pete. Tell me what personal training is, what personal trainers can do for people, and tell us a bit about your Dominate system.
Sure. That's a really broad statement. What is PT? Personal training is, in the broadest sense of what most people consider it, is somebody of a professional skill helping you to achieve a physical goal. Most people see personal trainers as motivators, that person that makes you accountable. It's so much more than that. Personally, I'm a little bit different, I think, from your typical personal trainer in that what my facility provides is both physical and mental training for people who have never done training of any sort, right up to, we have a couple of world champions in their particular sports as well. And coupled with the physicality that comes behind, obviously, you want to be fit and healthy, or you want to be the best in your sport. There is a mental aspect that comes with that. Things like what do you need to learn to be motivated to achieve such things, and what aspects of your training do you need to implement to make it a day-to-day habit and something that can eventually be enjoyed? Because for most people, exercise is something that is abhorred potentially, or or resisted, as opposed to something that can very much be enjoyed. And that usually comes from a background of having been on a side of life that where physical elements can be quite challenging through either a mental or a physical process. And for myself, I've come from a background of, at some point in my life, being quite physically challenged. And so, yeah, it's a very difficult and a broad range topic, and it depends hugely on the individual for what they want to achieve. So personal training is a means to an end, usually with a physical aspect in mind, but quite often, and underappreciated, a mentality that should go with it.
Right. Absolutely. There's so much, and I think our culture doesn't sort of appreciate this, but there's so much a mental component to any physical exercise and sort of physical endeavor, whether it's just getting into that routine that you're not into, or that high level sport stuff.
When most people think of personal training, you hop on Instagram.
Yeah. You're not thinking of mental people with strengthening their brain or something, but they are. There's a huge mental component and mental requirement to pushing your physical limits and maintaining your physical health. And then there's the return benefit to your mental state, being physically healthy.
One of the biggest parts is everyone sees it purely as the physical aspect, but for a lot of people, and myself included, it's my means to mentally keep myself sane. So I train not for the physicality side, I train for the peace of mind that it brings.
Yeah.
How do you get to that point, though, that peace of mind point where it's not just pain all of the time?
I think a lot of that comes from having a purpose for training and understanding and enjoying and embracing what that purpose is. And that does change. It's not a fixed thing, obviously. For myself, as I left school and started university, as a lot of people do, I went to college and I stacked on a heap of weight. And the short version of that is, after a few years, and I was about 30 kilos heavier than I am now, the motivation came from a place of, I don't like how I look, I don't like what I can't do. And so it was a negatively impacting motivation, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a means to get started. But then once once I got started and you said there is pain, but as long as you find a reason and you start to see a change very quickly, provided you're in a safe space, that a negative space can become a positive space. And I think as long as you set a parameter for yourself where you are ticking goals day to day, and or even if that goal is, I need a safe space for myself for half an hour, or I'm going to go and listen to music for half an hour. But while I do that, I'm going to walk on a treadmill. I'm going to climb some stairs. I'm going to do yoga. You need a positive impact to stop it becoming a task. I think that's the key, is rather than it becoming a day-to-day task, it becomes a place of self-fulfillment.
I've recently been reading a book by, I think his name's Dr. John Ratey. It's called Spark, with a exclamation point.
Okay.
And it's all about like the brain and exercise and things like that. And I think he was saying something along the lines of sort of, like you said, with those positive associations with exercise and doing it for the right reasons, quote unquote, that extra intrinsic motivation that really pushes you forward for the betterment of yourself, rather than because you need to be a certain way.
That's right. It's interesting you say that, actually, because you've got obviously your intrinsic and your extrinsic motivators. Most people will focus on extrinsic, particularly with something like if you're in a group exercise scenario. Usually it's based on, I want to look like that person, or I want to be as good as that person, which has usually a negative mental kickback when there's always going to be someone better than you. And so therefore you never typically reach a point of satisfaction. So being able to recognize what you want and what you're satisfied with, and understanding that progress in any way, shape or form is something to be self-rewarded for the efforts that you've made, is a really difficult thing. Even in fact, I was going to say, even at a professional level, I'd say it's even more prominent at a professional level.
That kind of negative pushing of yourself rather than chasing after a dream, kind of. Correct.
Because I think at a professional level, there's more at stake. There's more, right. Where one of the measurements of your performance is based upon others, right, by sheer point of the fact that you are now in a professional capacity, and you're trying to win events, which the metric for winning is beating other people, whereas
right, exactly,
it doesn't necessarily have to be viewed that way. It's like, I think if you are doing the best that you are physically able to do, and you as an athlete know that you have put in everything that you can possibly have done, the result is irrelevant, because in terms of whether you came first or last, because if you've done the best that you can, nothing will change that. So if you've given your 100%, then what else can you do?
Right, exactly.
And an acknowledgement of that, and understanding you can walk away and still feel fabulous about what you've done, regardless of what the outcome was.
It's interesting how when you're describing what a personal trainer does, you talked about helping someone find that motivation. And it made me think of my interaction with psychology and some sort of psychological input for non-exercise parts of my life, which came to a point of like doing things without being motivated to do them, because if you wait for motivation, it's like never going to get done, kind of thing. And so I'm interested.
Like discipline?
Yes.
Is that a word you would use?
That is a word that, I was, that's the thing. That's the word for that. So I wasn't thinking in terms of discipline, but you've unpacked me. So we can talk about discipline, and as a part of that, how do you find motivation? How do you help someone find a motivation? And how does somebody who doesn't fit in with, like, say they go to a gym and they see that guy that they're like, oh, I want to be like that guy, but maybe for whatever reason they're never going to be like that guy, or they have bad experiences with body image and general society sort of image of exercise and what people should look like and all this sort of stuff. So if we don't fit in with that, those general motivators, if we've had trouble getting motivated, what does it look like to help somebody in that journey?
It's interesting because what most people's perception of motivation is it's this omnipresent positive force that just comes from nowhere. And it really isn't. Like, you can have that, don't get me wrong. Some people just have that natural go hard, or the natural positivity of I'm going to just achieve. For most people, that's not how it works. Motivation is, me too, actually. It's a thought process. My view on motivation is it's acceptance of a goal, or for some people, it's acceptance of like a prescribed reality check that has to happen. So to put a little bit more information on that. So for myself, as an athlete, for me, I will set myself a goal and my motivation, or I have an event that might be coming up, and I'll set myself a training regime to meet what is required of that. So that's, for me, that is my motivation. I set myself all my events for, like, say, 2022 that's coming. My entire year is already booked with events. That is enough to motivate me to train, a little bit because it's exciting and these events are coming, a little bit because it's like, oh my God, if I'm not fit enough, I'm not going to be able to do these events. So there's a healthy dose of positive and negative balances there. And I think for a lot of people, motivation can come from, you've gone to see your health practitioner and that person, for whatever reason, has said, this has to happen, this change. You're at a point where this is now a non-negotiable. You're at a crossroads where you must, and that can be a motivation too. So whatever your reason, I mean, they both of those motivational types work. One is more emotionally based. So you have people who are motivated because they like to be either the best or they feel good. Or you have people who are more motivated behind, there is a reason behind why you need to do it. Either A, you have to train to a certain point to be able to do what you want to do. If you want to climb Mount Everest, there's a certain fitness that you have to do. If you've been given a health directive by your doctor, then usually it's based on the fact that there's cardio reason, cardio issues, or whatever it is, and the doctor, your health practitioner said you now need to make some serious life changes. That's more logical. It's more of a non-emotive driving force. So understanding how you as a person function, whether it's one or the other or a blend of both. Interestingly, in my experience, it's rarely both. It's usually one or the other. We also, there's that saying, we're all shades of gray. Typically, you either really thrive on emotionally based challenge, where myself as a PT might say, hey, there's an event here, let's work towards that. And you've got all the power talk and let's do the best that you can do. And some people thrive on that. Others will really shy away from that as intimidating. And you need to then say, hey, Michael, you and I might be doing the same event. And I will then say to you, well, to actually do this event, you've got step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, which will lead to you being able to actually do that event. And you might work better on having that non-emotive data just being fed to you. So to sum all that up, and how do you then apply that to someone? A good personal trainer is someone who's going to understand the personality type of their client and also the limitations of their client. So what are the factors that frighten that person? What are their physicality factors? And how can you then improve on those factors, but also do it in a space that feels safe and comforting? So recognizing that a person is either emotive or logically based, what are their then physical limitations, and say, well, this is your goal, and this is how you achieve that goal in the best way. This is, which may not be the way I like to train, but recognize that and say, well, let's put some steps in place along the pathway that suits you. Most personal trainers, and I will probably be criticized for saying this, are not good at that. They are good at their personality type and their way of training, which attracts a certain clientele.
Yeah. And I think to a degree, because personal training from the outside looks so complicated, you could certainly be, and this might not help the bottom line, so this might not be why it happens, but you could be upfront about, this is the kind of thing that I do for the kind of people that I do, for example.
Yeah.
I don't know.
100. Yeah, it is. And I think as any professional, you need to understand what your own limitations are. So I am like I said, I'm typically a high cardio, high athlete trainer. There are those people who will come, into our gym scenario and say, I want to be as shredded as possible. I want to be Instagram fit. There are trainers better than that than me. And so I was straight away, like I said, cool, that's a wonderful goal. I'm not the person you should be talking to. That's the person you should be talking to, rather than trying, misleading someone down a path. So recognition of that your skill set may not be the best skill set for someone, I think, is important to both yourself and a client in getting them their results.
It's interesting what you said about fear and emotions, because I resonate with that very much. I'm very much an emotional, kind of irrational, wandering uterus kind of a gal. And so a lot of what I associate with exercise is kind of emotional baggage from like when I was in school or doing PE and always being picked last and all that sort of stuff. And it just kind of flashes back in my mind every time I hop back in the gym or get back on the treadmill and things like that. And I just, it feels insurmountable. Do you have any advice for someone like me?
Yeah. The first thing is it's great that you've recognized that 100%. And that exercise has a stereotype attached to it. When we think exercise, the first thing you said was gym. It doesn't have to be a gym. Exercise doesn't have to be in a facility, and exercise isn't necessarily something you have to look at as, well, I'm going to do this for the point of, because I think I should or because I have to. A lot of people will disguise exercise as another scenario. So you maybe feel yourself like, well, we've literally just met 5 minutes ago, but I don't know anything about you, but it might be that for you, it might be that given what you've just said, rather than putting yourself in a scenario that is deemed as exercise, perhaps it means you go for a walk with headphones in, listening to a podcast like we're doing now, like so one of your favorite podcasts. And it might mean that you go and you walk for 45 minutes or however long your podcast is. By the time you get back in 45 minutes, even at a sedate walk, you've burned several hundred calories. You've ticked off something that you would normally do anyway. Perhaps you would normally do it when you're doing work. Even if you do emails on your phone while you go for a walk or obviously I say swim, you're not going to be doing emails while you're swimming, but the point remains that do an action that you would normally do in everyday life. So for me, taking my dog for a walk of an evening, I'll do my emails while I do that. Right. And which is something I would normally sit and do anyway. So to directly answer what you said, my advice would be to put yourself in a situation where you're doing something you would be doing anyway. It's a known factor, and do it in a scenario that is non-threatening. So usually, and like I said, in your situation, often that usually means being on your own and not putting yourself in a repeat scenario where, for PE, if you have anxiety around, like say PE, which usually, it's a group setting, don't put yourself in a group setting. And that's okay. Exercise doesn't have to be I'm going to be the fittest, the best, the best in a room type space. It can be all about, I just want to feel good. And that's all it needs to be.
I love that. Yeah.
Awesome. I want to sort of dive into that a little bit more. From the practical side, I guess, for people who have coordination issues or maybe mobility stuff going on that might be intimidated from social pressures and perceptions of what exercise is in the spaces like gyms where we do exercise. And you said that we can do it outside of gyms, which is a really important point. What sort of stuff can we do when we think about traditional forms of exercise, if we couldn't do that perhaps, or if we needed to work on coordination or within confinements of mobility? Is there certain ways we can still get into exercise, and particular ways that you would point people to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a wonderful case for using a personal trainer for the purpose of that person's unique knowledge and I guess enhanced skill set is going to help that person find alternatives without it feeling demeaning or less. I'm really glad you've raised that, actually. So one of the training groups that I personally have, which is quite a large training group, we have people with all sorts of limitations. So every workout that we do has a base format for, and I'll use the term completely abled personnel to undertake, rather than making sort of a different workout. I have clients who cannot use either one or two of their arms in any way, shape or form. They'll still have the same workout written up on the board and still be part of the group, but there will be alternatives written on the board, which are of equal effort, if you will. So the reason I like that and where I'm heading with this is you need, I think, either a friend, a community, or a professional that is able to empower you in a way that makes it feel as normal as possible, so it doesn't feel like there is special attention being given. And the reason that I do this in my group and still have it all under the same sort of singular workout structure is, regardless of whether a person is completely able, they can't use their arms, or they have a coordination limitation, or I have some people who cannot use their legs, it still provides that community feel of we are all doing the same workout. We are all achieving this together. We are doing it in our own pathway, and that's okay. But the camaraderie that comes from that, and the provision of this is a safe space, and whether that's in my example, that's in a large community situation, or whether it's a one-on-one with a personal trainer, the provision of a situation that feels as natural and as normal as possible is the key to that answer. And that's very difficult to do on your own. There are tools and there are resources out there where you can do that absolutely on your own. But I think that is a perfect example of where a professional or a strong friendship base is a really great mechanic to have behind you, because that's a very difficult thing to overcome on your own. Hence, that's why you've got a limitation of, I don't want to go to the gym, and I don't want to do this because I don't feel like I fit into a normal scenario. Yeah.
And just to follow on from that, this is going to possibly sound like a dumb question, but I can totally get that there's that need for that social connection stuff, and I can speak to it, having experienced it myself. But if somebody is socially isolated and feeling like they might not fit in that scenario, is there a way for them to find a personal trainer that's going to be the kind of personal trainer that they need and not like the Instagram-y type? Is there, how did they do that?
Two parts. Are there trainers that do that? Absolutely. Are they easy to find? Not particularly.
Okay.
So you're right. There is a stereotype on personal training for a reason, because obviously the great many personal trainers are typically what you might think of a personal trainer. And I mean no disrespect by that statement at all. There are, I think if someone is particularly, I'll use the example you said of, say, socially isolated. What we're doing now, the way that we are having this podcast, is a great, the technology that exists today is a great way of overcoming that. So people with social anxiety, being able to talk through a screen is a wonderful way to get around that. And I have several international clients who, whilst they don't have social anxiety per se, obviously being in a different country means that this is how we do our personal training. So I'm going to use one gentleman in particular who is a runner. His personal training with me involves him putting on a headset, so like a Bluetooth headphones, and going for a run. And I will monitor his vital signs through his watch through a live feed, and then we'll talk to him while he runs. I have no idea. I've never met this gentleman in my life. I've never even I know what he looks like.
That's crazy.
Photos, but we've never even had a Skype call. He will just call me when he's about to run, and he'll run, and I have a map application on my screen, and I can watch where he runs, and I can look at his heart rate data and say, oh, excellent, I think you should go a little bit harder. So that way,
wild.
It's like having Siri in your pocket, the Australian-based Siri voice in your headset while you run. And for him, that's what he wants. He doesn't want to have that. He doesn't want to have me, Peter, talking to him. He just wants to have a voice in his ear saying, run harder, turn left, go hard, well done.
Wow.
And so, I hope that answers a little bit. Yes, there are. So yes, there is the technology and resources and a different point of view to go around getting around how to do that. And I think technology, particularly with remote access, things like Zoom, and there are other online applications. Another great example is a cycling app, which is called Zwift, or Zwift, however you.
I think I've heard of this. Yeah.
How do you spell it? Just to be
Z. So ZWIFT.
Okay, cool. Yep.
And it's essentially you ride your bike connected to a computer in your basement, and you can ride on your own and do races all around the world, or locations all around the world, or you can link up with other people from all around the planet and go on virtual rides together, which eliminates the social context or probably a better example is incrementally you can introduce that if you wish. So some people who, by dint of being snowed into their basement for 6 months of the year, use it for that methodology. And some people who don't particularly want to be involved in a group scenario now have the option, if they want to, being able to link up with someone else from across the planet and say, hey, do you want to go for a ride? And so you can incrementally work your way up to from, I want to exercise on my own, or I'm going to exercise in a group. And that's a good example of not having a professional in that scenario.
I think that speaks to two things. One, the malleability of personal training and like social resources for exercise, but also like the value of technology in the space, which I had no idea you could do that sort of stuff that you just talked about, because the old way of doing things hasn't gone anywhere. You can still do the traditional way, and then technology gives us like more options. So that's so cool that you can do that. And I'm wondering if are you a bit of a leader in the pack in the personal training space with the adoption of this technology, or is it pretty normal and I'm just not aware?
It's not common. So more and more so. So a lot of high-end athletes are across this space, in terms of trying to find just other people to train with. From a personal training point of view, absolutely, there are lots of people who are doing what I'm doing as well. But it's not common from a day-to-day personal training point of view.
Okay.
But that's not to say it's difficult. It's not difficult either. It's more just an introduction of a new technology and a new way of thinking that you don't have to go to a gym. You don't have to go out and about. You could do it in your bedroom if you wanted to. There's so many different ways of virtually doing things nowadays. Like you can virtually run on the Great Wall if you so wish. There are so many other metrics of, you might want to go for, I think we used the example before, go for a walk, you listen to a podcast, come back, upload your watch's walk data, and it will show you how far along the Great Wall you've walked today. And in 30 days time, when you've walked a segment of the Great Wall, you can get medals and achievements and all sorts of stat-based things, if that's where your personality decides that, if that's a motivational tool for you to say, hey, Michael, you've walked across Washington, D.C. in the last 2 weeks. Well done. That can be, if that's the reason that you get up and are motivated to go for a walk in the Rockies, that works.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I think though, the cynic in me is kind of wondering when does the dark side of tracking every detail kind of come in, and when can you become a bit obsessed with the statistics, as it were, instead of focusing on the joy of it all?
I think that comes down to personality type. There is definitely some. It's something to be wary of, and you can go down a path of competitiveness. I think, particularly, which is something that is definitely, I think, more prevalent in a higher skill set. The beautiful thing about this kind of technology, in that if you are a beginner exerciser, it's a great way of tracking progress, and the innate body dysmorphia type scenarios don't tend to be a factor in this case, because the statistics that this software gives you aren't based around your weight,
bicep size, weight. Yeah, right.
Yeah, which is, I think, is a huge positive.
Yeah,
as you become,
I would agree.
Yeah, as you become more and more, I think if you do head down the path of becoming competitive, that is something that can absolutely come into effect. And I have had athletes that have, their focus has been, oh, I'm not as good as I used to be. And yeah,
Right.
that's having I think an external support network for that is vital. But yeah, so from what you said, is that something that occurs? Absolutely. Less so with this technology though, because it doesn't focus on our body dysmorphic stereotypes.
Right.
And you can just do it for fun too. Like it's not all stat based. You can just say, hey, I would like to hop on my bike and go for a ride down the Champs-Elysees, just because I can, and just and you can have a visual screen of you riding around the Arc de Triomphe and listening to music, and you can turn that off too, should you wish.
Right.
Yeah. How are you feeling, Jade? Being someone that was coming from a space of wanting to be motivated. Maybe I got that wrong. Wanting to know a bit about this stuff to get into that space. Are you feeling better or worse? Or I'm feeling more informed.
I think it's less. Right. I think it's less a case of more motivated but more a case of less afraid. And I think that translates to basically the same thing, which is a positive outcome, I think.
Yeah. It's not a bad way to look at it, actually. It's I think being afraid is not a bad thing either.
Right. You can use fear as a motivator for sure. But sometimes it really does dampen things if you take it.
It can be crippling, 100%. I think the greatest takeaway, no matter what your expectation around physical health or mental health too, because I think that the two are intrinsically linked, is it can be something that can be enjoyed, and there is no expectation other than what you put on yourself, because at the end of the day, it's your body and it's your mindset. And yes, there are social pressures which mean nothing. And surround yourself with people, or if you are someone who doesn't want to be surrounded with people, surround yourself with concepts, ideas, and expectations that are positive for yourself. Nothing else matters. You don't have to be able to run. You don't have to be able to achieve anything other than, if you are healthy and you feel good about yourself, what else is there?
I love that.
Fantastic way to bring it home. And to wrap it up, I just want to ask, I feel like we're already in the future with all the stuff I didn't know about, but what's down the track for this stuff, and what kind of changes do you want to see in the world in the space of personal training, exercise, gyms, etc.?
Okay, part one. What's coming? I'm pretty excited. I am a huge tech nerd. I'm really excited for where both VR and AR is coming with this technology. And there's a lot of interesting work being done on taking these applications that are currently externally screen-based and bringing them to a virtual space. So it's been tried and already done, and I've experienced some of that through both PlayStation VR and Oculus. There's some interesting applications in that space. And I don't think it's been done well yet. And I don't think the technology is like that, with the clunky headsets and sweating and So I don't know what the answer is to solve that yet, but there are some very exciting applications of being fully immersed in a virtual space for exercise. So that's an interesting one. And also then the connectivity around the globe that can bring, and being able to exercise literally anywhere, fictional or real, with anyone, fictional or real. So that's quite exciting, and I'll look forward to. I think in the next 2 or 3 years, I think AR in particular is going to have a big boost in that. And then in terms of the second part, like what's going down the track, and from what I like to see changed, it's difficult. It's because we're all different. Personally, I hate the stigmatism that comes with exercise. Nothing I do as a personal trainer is anything like a stereotypical trainer. My gym is not, I have almost no weights in my gym. It's all body weight and climbing and all that, and stuff that will mentally challenge people from a point of being able to then achieve something they thought was impossible. So I think the biggest change there needs to be an acceptance of exercise is okay. Exercise is something that has to be a positive experience, regardless of what your outcome is, regardless of whether you're a professional athlete or you want to be Instagram fit. And there's nothing wrong with having that look, but that's not the look. It's a look.
Yeah.
And there are, as long as you are achieving what you want to achieve, that is fine. I think we're doing well. I think like the progression towards that has improved over the last probably 5 years. It's not at a point of total acceptance yet, because obviously everyone wants to look like, the Mia Khalifas of the world. And I think the biggest step that will go towards breaking that is separating aesthetics of looks from fitness, because they are not the same thing.
Yes.
You can look amazing and not be fit, and you can be fit and not look amazing.
Yeah. What's that? I don't know which magazine it was with, but Zac Efron, I think he did an interview where he said that his Baywatch workout routine was not sustainable in the slightest. Like he looked amazing, but he had like a single-digit fat percentage, and it just wasn't healthy for it.
I mean, the whole sport of body sculpting is based around that concept of how physically impressive can we look, but that's not something you can maintain.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So where can we find you, mate?
Online for sure. So physically, I am physically based on the Sunshine Coast. Dominate Fitness is the name of my business. I'm currently attached to an existing gym called Easy Fit Health and Fitness Club, which is a wonderful facility, and they do a lot symbiotically with myself. But on an online space, dominatefitness.com.au is where I'm at, and I said I do a lot of online fitness work in both a consultation point of view and also from a virtual training point of view.
Excellent. I'll put your details in the description-y thing of the video, so people can reach you and do some of that virtual stuff. And I'm looking forward to seeing more happen in that space, and to checking out some of this stuff that I didn't know about that's happening in the tech space as far as exercise goes. And I certainly got a lot out of your conceptualization of exercise and motivation. So thank you so much.
I'm glad.
Thanks for the chat, lads.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.
Cheers.